Welcome. I wanted to talk about yesterday's news. Before I do that, I thought we should have 1 minute of silence for the victims of the shooting at Robb Elementary School in Uvalde, Texas. So, begin now. Thank you for joining. I've got quite a lot of things to say. First of all, I'm your host, Tatiana Prophet. I'm an award-winning journalist, and I started Back to Facts more than 4 years ago now, realizing that our information systems were broken. I learned a few things about the shooting, about yesterday's shooting, that some people may not have noticed. First of all, I just want to say it is incredibly painful to even read the articles on it. And my inclination is anymore or lately just not even read the details because they're just so upsetting. And I know we all feel this way, especially when it comes to young children and the fact that they were just alive on Monday. So I found out that there was a school police officer who was at the front of the school as this shooter was approaching with one report said 2 long guns, sort of AR-15 style, and another report said a handgun and 1 long gun. But either way, they were out in the open. Now, here's where I'm not really sure what happened because the spokesperson for the county public safety department was speaking with some reporters, I think Fox News reporters, and was saying that the first person to engage this shooter, this 18-year-old, this person is unnamed, but it was a school police officer. And the person said that the shooter dropped a backpack of ammunition at the front door due to the intervention by this police officer. So then I heard that one officer's gun had malfunctioned, and I've been trying to establish whether it was this officer's gun that malfunctioned right at the beginning. There are 4 the Unified Consolidated Independent School District of Uvalde has its own police department, but they cover the high school and the elementary, and I'm not sure if there's more than one elementary. I would imagine maybe there is more than one elementary school there. But in any case, the article I was reading was saying that often when there is a police presence at schools, they will concentrate on the high schools more. Okay, that's the first thing. So you can go on the Consolidated Independent School District's website and you can see the pictures of all of the officers. There's a lieutenant and there's a, commander, and then there's 4 officers. One of them, they're all male except there's 1 woman. I don't know who was present. And it was strange because the spokesperson who was speaking with Fox News seemed a little odd when the journalist asked what had happened to this officer who engaged the shooter in the beginning. And he kind of just he didn't answer the question. He deflected. He goes, and then he was speaking sort of about all of them and how some of them had been injured. Because we know that a Border Patrol officer who was nearby came in also, and I think either the Border Patrol officer or a sheriff's deputy actually ended up shooting and killing the shooter. But in any case, the first question I had when I first heard about the guy at the front who engaged the shooter, the police officer, was, oh, is he okay? Can't find any information on this person again, and I can't determine with 100% certainty that that person's gun malfunctioned. Next bit of information. Apparently, now the Dallas Morning News came out with an article saying that this school district had purchased a social media monitoring system called Safety Sentinel. I have it on my phone, but it has the word Sentinel in it, and I think safety. There was a paywall on the Dallas Morning News site, but I went to search for Safety Sentinel, and you have to register in order to even go on their site, like sign in. Obviously, it was not effective and it was not working. The principle sounds good, but I don't know how much you've read about this case, but this teen, he was still in high school. He was a senior at the Uvalde High School. And apparently his grandfather told a journalist that he had an argument with his grandmother about the fact that he wasn't going to be graduating due to his poor academic performance. Later, I just read another article that said they were arguing about a phone bill. He was not living with his parents. Another journalist tracked down the boyfriend of his mother, the mother lives a few miles away. Apparently, she's not with the father, and the boyfriend was speaking, just saying he was a loner. He played Call of Duty all the time. He had a punching bag in his room, super quiet, his classmates said that he had red flags, meaning, he would text inappropriate things to his female coworkers. One of the articles said he worked at Whataburger, and another of the articles said he worked at Wendy's. So, it's very interesting, just as a side note on journalism, right after an event such as this happens, this rampage killing, there are multiple reports usually that come out. Some are conflicting, we hear that a lot. I always try to go to the local news. So the local San Antonio TV station is where I heard about the school police officer being armed. Okay, and I think it's highly likely that that's the person whose gun malfunctioned, because it did stop the guy from bringing the backpack of ammunition in, but did not stop the shooter from going. And then he went to a fourth grade classroom, banged on the door, opened it, and apparently he shot everybody in that classroom, which is really, really just beyond horrific. And I also want to say that, once again, all students at that school are now traumatized for life. They're scarred, and they probably, sadly, will not be getting the help that they need in order to function in life. At optimum levels, whatever that is in this world. And again, I'm probably going to go through the faces and names, but I think that these types of these rampage killings are probably the worst of our species, just the worst events of our species. And I can't imagine being either a fourth grader or their parents or siblings. It's just beyond, Anyway, I won't waste time because I'm going to be having to go in about 15 minutes. Incidentally, this town is where the actor Matthew McConaughey was born. And so he's now all over social media saying that we have to do something. We have to recalibrate. And of course, I agree with him on that. Now, let's go to the political situation, okay? Because this little tidbit of information was also posted on Twitter about, the school police officer having a gun, being armed. And people on Twitter have just taken it and run with it. Oh, well, this just dispels the good guy with a gun narrative. Oh, see? You know, Republicans have blood on their hands and all this stuff, which is I used to agree with this. Okay, I can remember, like, maybe it was after Sandy Hook, which I believe was New Year's, was in January 2013, was Sandy Hook, because it was after Obama's reelection. And I remember thinking how his reelection was, you know, the honeymoon period was over. And I also remember that some girl that performed at his inauguration went back home to Chicago and was killed in gun violence. And I remember thinking, the honeymoon is over, if there ever was one, right? But that's for another day. And so I, at one point, at the urging of a former classmate of mine from high school, I actually I tagged every single Republican senator on Twitter after a gun legislation failed to pass the Senate, and told them they had blood on their hands at the urging of this friend of mine, because I completely agree with him. And I know that there are people doing that right now, and let me just tell you really quick why these narratives are false. Number one, you can have a law, but if it's not enforced, then it's not going to be enforced. And there are a heck of a lot of laws in this country and around the world that are not enforced, whether due to lack of resources, or just lack of will. What most people don't know is that we have a national background check system. It is literally called the National Instant Background Check System. And it is has an entire building to itself in West Virginia, and it is run by the FBI. But the FBI receives information from the states and the counties. And mental health is a notoriously wiggly, muddy type of thing, where sometimes it's privacy laws regarding mental health, sometimes it's just a lack of resources. And every year, just like with hate crime statistics, each municipality or state reports at a different level depending on the resources, the personnel, etc. So most of the mass shooters from the last few years, going back to Sandy Hook, probably would not have passed a background check if the information had been complete. So again, more laws? Well, yeah, but we already have laws and they're not being enforced. I mean, just look at city blocks, for example, in Chicago. People say, oh yeah, Chicago doesn't, crime is down from the early 90s. Well, I went to college in Chicago in the 90s, and it's not the city, it's literally neighborhood by neighborhood that it bears the brunt of this constant gun violence. So what I'm saying is that criminals get guns all the time. We know this, right? So we know, we're wondering, what is wrong with our public safety departments? What is wrong with our legal system? Well, plenty wrong. And should we support them? Yes, we should support the good men and women up in public safety. But there's corruption, and every time we have either an officer-involved shooting of an unarmed person, whether whatever race they are, because a lot of white people, unarmed white people, also get killed by police, and Pacific and Asian American Pacific Islander. We always say we're going to do reform, but we don't. Because each individual, city and police and department must ferret out its own corruption. Because we don't really want to have a federal police state, right? I would think that we don't. And we want our streets to be safe, right? So, the defunding of the police and all the collateral damage from the George Floyd killing and the pandemic is obviously just exacerbating this whole situation and making it worse. But so what I wanted to say about the good guy with a gun thing is that even if, let's say it wasn't that guy who was there in the beginning, the police officer whose gun malfunctioned, let's say it worked. Well, he wasn't able to stop the guy. The teen was wearing a vest, a body armor vest, but without the Kevlar, is what they're saying. And oh, by the way, I always go to local news. I make it a point. And I'm never disappointed. I almost always find out details that will not be in the national news. Now, the national news may get some things right, but they might not be accurate. So just bear that in mind. And so he did not stop the shooter. He was one guy and he had a gun. I think his gun probably malfunctioned. Now, what does that mean? That means, well, that's a heck of a bad luck, isn't it? Because again, my stance now, after, thinking, oh, a good guy with a gun is a myth, every time one of these things would happen, I'd be like, okay, well, wait a minute. Legally purchase? Where do I stand on this? Oh, yeah. Let's look at the statistics of how many good guys with a gun ever saved anybody. Turns out there are actually some pretty obvious ones that happened over the last few years. One, which I've mentioned after the Buffalo shooting, was a guy in the back of a church, I forget where it was, probably Texas, who ended up shooting a shooter dead from the back of the congregation because he was a former FBI agent. This is what I always say. If someone says to you, oh, the good guy with the gun thing is a myth, you say, at least you have a chance. Okay, and we also know that at the Taiwanese church in Orange County in Laguna Woods, the only person who died was a doctor who overpowered the shooter. So, brave, good individuals are always a help, and you have a chance. So that is why the right to bear arms is so sacred. And remember, too, the National Rifle Association is one of the largest organizations that offers gun safety training. And it's so funny now when you look at this stuff, you see something happen like this and they talk about the gun lobby and the powerful gun lobby and you can take on the gun lobby. And it's like, well, yeah, the gun lobby is advocating for every single law-abiding citizen who has never committed a crime in their entire lives and has the right to bear as many arms as they see fit to protect themselves or their family or for whatever reason. Because if you are saying we cannot have guns and you should be punished and you should be punished and you should be punished, then we are not only interfering with the Constitution and the right to bear arms, yes, too many angry people, yes, Robin, but we are actually possibly causing more loss of life because we are depriving people in dangerous areas from defending themselves. And yes, the anger and the rage, I've said this before when I talk about mass shootings, the common, there's not much common theme with rampage killers, except the fact that they're male, of all races, but it's the rage and it's the lack of respect for human life. And the more that these things happen, the more likely they are to happen again because we have cheapened human life. The fact that we adults cannot protect our children, it just tells our young people that we're incapable and we're failing them. Yeah. Thank you, Robin. It's good to see all of you. And I really... I just want to say that I'm going to continue to say what I'm saying here because, the defenses failed. The Social Sentinel company thing didn't work because this kid posted on social media what he was planning to do. So if you're paying for a monitoring service as a school, that's a great idea, but it clearly wasn't working. It didn't work. Maybe, I don't know, because he posted on Instagram regularly about weapons. He was doing poorly in school. He was probably had some truancy, chronic truancy. And by the way, his picture really resembles the Night Stalker, Richard Ramirez. It very much resembles him. just, just the features and the gaunt, empty look. If y'all remember the Night Stalker from the 1980s in Los Angeles. Anyway, I just want to say that we have to change this. But we need to change this coming from a place of facts and our best understanding of, what causes these things. Clearly, it is multi-pronged. And I will say also that this idea that shooting games do not have a hand in this is not only preposterous, but it's extremely irresponsible, because all it takes is one person whose mind is vulnerable to the normalization of violence to then and who would cross that line, like with rage, for that to matter. And do I think we should ban all shooting video games like Grand Theft Auto and Call of Duty? No. I think what we need to do is start giving a damn about parents and their relationships with their children. Both of his parents had a criminal record. The foster system is insanely dysfunctional. We all know that. Okay, there's something really horribly wrong with the foster system. And, parenting classes, this stuff now is like second generation. I'm sure that students who were in high school when the Columbine shooting happened are now parents. And we're still just arguing and fighting over the same thing. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, if people try to drag you down into the normal grooves of rampage killing political debate, remember a few things. They had a social media monitoring system. The guy posted on social media regularly. He got his guns the day after his 18th birthday. And by the way, I saw a receipt in one article. I saw a receipt from an online provider out of Georgia. But I saw there was another article, local news, that said that he had actually bought it at this place called Oasis Defense. So because the company in Georgia can only ship to a licensed gun dealer, which was Oasis. But somehow somebody got a hold of that receipt from the Georgia company, and apparently the Oasis people wouldn't confirm anything. So, but the word is going around that he purchased this legally because it was the dealer that had bought it from this company in Georgia that just ships guns out. So again, where there's rage, there is a way. So what we have to do is protect our children. Okay, I use the example of a jewelry store. Okay, you have an alarm system at a jewelry store and you have an armed person, an armed guard. And preferably you should have more than one armed guard. But I mean, they have to take their job extremely seriously. And something tells me, it's a small town. It's like a town of 15,000 people. But, with this police department, this school police department of 4 officers and 2 lieutenants or whatever, something tells me, they were caught a little flat-footed, which shouldn't be happening, okay? We have to do better. And yes, we should not be sending $40 billion to a country where we've been involved and messing around with this country for decades. We launder money through it, we being the United States government, and I've written many, many articles on my website about this. We should be using that money. Can you imagine $40 billion at our schools, our elementary schools? And people say, well, we don't want the optics, or we don't want our schools to be prisons. No, we don't, but I'd like them to be jewelry stores, okay? So thanks for watching. I gotta go, and just feel free to check out the website and the links. I know, our own people. And then when you talk about America first and everybody freaks out, like, oh, and by the way, if anybody is going to use this mass shooting to talk about white supremacists, well, it's just ridiculous. Do you understand now what's happening? Thank you, Robin. Yeah. So, all right. We need to take care of our people and above all our children. Bye. See you soon.